Hello, children. Today we are going to study the story Ivan's Tries an O Level by Colin Dexter. This story is from your book 2, Vistas. Now, what is O Level? O Level stands for Ordinary Level Exams taken by 16-year-olds usually, okay? After 2 years of study in United Kingdom or Britain. The author, Colin Dexter, was an English crime writer known for writing 13 acclaimed mystery novels featuring Chief Inspector Morse, which were also televised. He also wrote various short stories about crime and criminals. Now, this particular story, Ivan's Tries an O Level, is an engrossing story where the writer Colin Dexter arouses the reader's curiosity and sustains it throughout the narration. The entire story is a battle of wits between Evans, a criminal, and the jail authorities. Despite the best efforts of prison officials, Evans outwits them and has the last laugh. Being good at predicting the moves of his rivals and being well connected with intelligent, clever, and manipulative friends, Evans is able to escape from right under the nose of the prison authorities without having to break a single lock. In fact, he is officially escorted out of the prison by the officials themselves. The course of action for jailbreak followed by him is diametrically opposite to the one visualized by the prison authorities, and they realize that Evans has befooled them much after the tables are turned on them. What makes the story engrossing is that it is primarily an individual who keeps the entire system on the run for a good while and eventually slips out of their hands, making them admit sheepishly that they were good for a giggle, gullible officers. The story is an account of the jailbreak by a criminal who has successfully broken jail thrice on earlier occasions also. It gives a glimpse, a quick look of the mind of a criminal whose dexterity, mastery, or cleverness at manipulating, handling, and implementing his plans is so perfect and accurate that though befooled, made a fool of at his hands, the officials can't help but secretly admire the criminal's ingenuity, creative imagination, and sharpness for outwitting his opponents. Now, the characters. Evans, of course, he is the antagonist, and he is a cunning kleptomaniac, a criminal or a thief, a habitual criminal who can't help himself, before committing a theft. He specializes in escaping from prison. The governor or the jailer, as we call them in India, he is the gullible head of Oxford Prison. Jackson. He is an experienced prison officer, but still Evans manages to escape from under his nose. Stephens is a newly recruited prison officer. McLeary. He is an accomplice or partner in crime of Evans. He is disguised as an invigilator. Now, The secretary of the examination board received a request from the governor, a jailer of the Oxford prison, that a prisoner named James Rodrigues Ivan was interested in getting an academic qualification. Now we can see Oxford prison on screen. It is in Great Britain. Evans had been taking night classes for his O-level examination since September. Though the secretary of the examination board found the request quite unusual, yet he approved of the request after being given the assurance that Evans was not the violent sort and was just a habitual kleptomaniac. Evans was allowed to answer the paper in his cell, invigilated by one of the parsons, churchmen or priest from the church. Here's a picture of Evans's cell, his 6x6 cell in the prison, where he was to write his exam. Once examination board gave clearance, the elaborate preparations and precautions needed to be taken for the examination. After all, they were handling a prisoner over here and no chances could be taken. By the orders of the governor, Jackson, the senior prison officer, was asked to take away Evans's razor and nail file, which could be potential or possible weapons. His nail scissors had already been taken away. However, Evans managed to retain his hat, saying it had always brought him luck. Here we can see Jackson and Stephens on screen. Jackson, an old officer, Stephens, a newly recruited officer. Deep within, Jackson was compassionate, and so he let Evans keep his hat. A microphone was installed in the cell. It was bugged on governor's order, which the governor himself would monitor. Reverend McCleary from St. Mary's Maggs was appointed to invigilate. Here on screen we can see McCleary, the parson from St. Mary's Maggs, who came as an invigilator. The 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. Reverend McCleary arrived on time, carrying a small suitcase which contained a sealed question paper, a yellow invigilation form, a special authentication card from the examination board, a paper knife, a Bible, and a copy of the Church Times. He was led to the D wing of the prison, where he was greeted by Jackson, and then from there he was taken to Evans's cell, leaving all doors behind him locked. Here, the governor was all grey with worries. He was constantly plagued with doubts about the safety precautions. Though he knew that he had done all that was possible, yet that niggling doubt was there in his mind. The governor knew that it would be difficult for Evans to escape, considering that all doors had been locked and entire staff of the prison put on alert. Still, the governor did not want to take any chances. The receiver was switched on so that the governor could listen in case Evans tried to take advantage of the parson or tried to hold him hostage, a prisoner, by using something like a jackknife that McCleary might have innocently carried in. The moment this thought came to his mind, he called up Jackson's, who in turn asked Stephens to frisk McCleary thoroughly. The only thing that aroused Stephens' curiosity was the semi-inflated rubber ring that McCleary carried. When Jackson made fun of it, so McCleary got quite annoyed and told rather gruffly that he suffered from piles or hemorrhoids and he needed it if he had to sit for a long time. After a short delay in the activities, filling up of form, frisking and all, the examination finally started at 9:25 am instead of 9:15. Now, Stephens was deployed to stand in the cell on guard. But Evans complained that Stephens was a disturbance in the cell and had him posted outside the cell. This is Evans's cell. We can see Evans sitting. Now, at 9:40 am, there was a call from the secretary of the examination board that they had forgotten to send the correction slip with the question paper. The assistant to the secretary of the examination board wanted to convey the correction orally, so the governor connected the receiver to Evans's cell. While he was doing so, a thought flashed through his mind that maybe the call was a hoax, but he dismissed it, thinking he was overdoing his fears. Still, he tried to check by calling the examination board, but the line was busy. So he himself laughed, Of course, the assistant had called from examination board, so the line had to be busy. The assistant conveyed the correction to McCleary, who in turn conveyed it to Evans. A few minutes later, the phone rang again, and it was the magistrate's court asking for a prison van and a couple of prison officers. The governor grew suspicious once again, but he thought he was being overly cautious. Here, Evans kept a vigil outside the cell, peeping in every 1 to 2 minutes through the peephole. Each time he saw Evans staring blankly at the door with his pen in his mouth, as if waiting for some inspiration. Then Evans asked McCleary for permission to cover his shoulders with his blanket as he was feeling a bit cold. McCleary allowed him to do so, and he himself covered Evans. So the examination went on as scheduled, though with a few interruptions. At 11:22, 3 minutes before the examination was to be over, Jackson calls Stephens, telling him that the governor wants to speak to him. Stephen listens to the rapidly spoken orders given over the phone. At 11:25 a.m., the examination got over and Stephens, as ordered by the governor over the phone, himself accompanied McCleary to the main prison gates, ensuring that all gates behind him were left locked as ordered by the governor. As they were going towards the main gate, Stephens had a vague feeling that the invigilator had suddenly grown thinner. Actually, he should have acted immediately, but he let it pass. He let the feeling pass. After seeing off McCleary, Stephen just decided to check on Evans in his cell. Some sixth sense, maybe. When he reached Evans's cell, he found in Evans's chair a man with blood dripping on his face and through the beard from the tuft of his closely cropped hair and onto his clerical coat. Stephen shouted for Jackson and an alert was sounded. The police and the ambulance were called. McCleary could feebly tell them not to worry as he knew where Evans could be. He was taken out into the courtyard where McCleary struggled to open the question paper and showed them the photocopied sheet that had been cleverly placed over the last blank page. It had some German text instructing Evans to follow the plan and that the vital time was 3 minutes before the examination ended, the second phone call. It also said that he should not hit the parson too hard and also not to overdo his Scots accent. The whole machinery was blindly active. None of them tried to confirm McCleary's identity. And hunt for Evans began in earnest. The whole prison was abuzz with the news that a prisoner had managed to escape from the prison. Detective Superintendent Carter too was called and instructed to take McCleary along as he seemed to know where Evans was headed. In search for Evans, police had to be called in. So, Detective Superintendent Carter took McCleary along with him in his car to search for Evans. McCleary directed the car towards Elsfield Way to make it seem that someone from the examination department was involved in planning the escape with instructions on the question paper. It also came up that the instructions over the phone received by Stephens to escort McCleary to the gates were not given by the governor. Another carelessness that came to light was that during the inspection of his cell the night before the examination, Jackson had failed to find the cleric's dress, a false beard, a pair of spectacles, and possibly a weapon hidden there. Carter came back empty-handed and reported to the governor that Evans was spotted, but then they lost the chase. So the governor directed the police towards Newbury based on what he had understood from the German text. He also sought to confirm from Carter that McCleary had been hospitalized or not. Carter told him that he had left McCleary at the examination office. Governor called up examination board office only to be told that McCleary had been sent to Radcliffe Hospital. So, Governor rang up Radcliffe Hospital, where he was informed that when they reached the examination board office, McCleary was not to be found anywhere. The governor suddenly understood the whole plan. The truth dawned on him and he put two and two together. They rushed to McCleary's house. The original parson, who was to be the invigilator, they found him bound and gagged, tied and gagged. A cloth was put over his mouth since 8:15 a.m. The governor then realized that he had been wrong to think that Evans had walked out impersonating McCleary. In fact, Evans had stayed in impersonating McCleary. Here, Evans was a free man and he walked into his hotel, the Golden Lion, after having dinner of fish and chips, satisfied with the way things had turned out that day. He was thankful to McCleary for wearing 2 pieces each of the parson's dress, and his friends for cleverly organizing the map and the information. Remember that phone call? In a relaxed state, he walked into his room only to be shocked by the presence of the governor. Evans knew he was beaten. He knew that it was the correction slip that had given him away, and he suspected that the girl at the reception must have provided the necessary information to the jail authorities. He knew his game was up. Evans then told the entire story to the governor. Evans said that his friend had not been able to fix a hotel for him. So, the phone call at 9:40 a.m. gave the hotel's name and confirmed the time of the examination for further planning. The call at 11:22 was managed because of this information. Anyway, the phone call before the exam got over had been a helpful distraction as well. Then Evans explained to the governor about the blood. He told him that the ring contained pig's blood and the chemical that they had mixed in the pig's blood with the pig's blood to prevent it from clotting. It was a really genius stroke on the part of Evans's friends. Evans then revealed that he could plan all that with friends like the German teacher who gave him tuitions in the prison. Evans has the last laugh. We can see Evans. See that smile? Evans was handcuffed again by a prison officer, even as he told the governor that he was planning an O-level exam next in Italian. The governor said that he might not be with them in September, and Evans thought it over for a moment and then added, perhaps. The prison van took off, and the so-called prison officer, a friend of Evans, removed the handcuffs. The driver asked for directions, and Evans asked him to drive to Newbury. Evans is successful once again from escaping from right under the governor's nose. The story, Evans tries an O-level, conveys the message that presence of mind, a cool head, well-planned and well-turned moves can give one an edge over others. One should never take one's rivals for granted and should never jump to hasty conclusions as they prevent one from seeing the obvious. The story also conveys the message that a multi-dimensional approach is very important while tackling tricky problems, and ready wit adds spice to the entire scenario. Without these, all our energy and endeavors prove to be nothing but a waste of time. Now, let me briefly go through the characters of Evans and the governor. Evans is a quiet sort of a person, not given to tantrums and does not believe in violence. In the Oxford prison, he regularly participates in various functions and is a bit of an exhibitionist. He is a congenital kleptomaniac by birth, congenital meaning by birth, and has been sent to jail on earlier occasions also. However, before being sent to Oxford prison, he has escaped from jail thrice. Among the Oxford prison officers, he is popularly known as Evans the Break. Currently, he is preparing for the O-level German examination, which, however, is a part of his fourth jailbreak attempt. He has something magnetic about his personality and has many friends within the prison premises and various other departments outside the prison. When, towards the close of the story, the governor asks him how he could manage all that, Evans himself admits, I've got lots of friends though. He is capable of winning affection of the concerned people. In the words of the author, the senior prison officer and Evans are warm enemies, and he is called Little Einstein by Jackson. The governor, too, is appreciative of Evans's innovative mind. Evans has presence of mind and is quick-witted enough to think of the right answers at critical junctures. Evans, calling his bobble hat a lucky charm, is just off the cuff, but it disarms Jackson and he does not insist on him to remove it. He is capable of foreseeing things, and all through the escape game, he is always a few steps ahead of the prison authorities. He believes in fighting to the finish and wants his adversaries fully vanquished. His handing over the paper giving information about the hotel where he is going to stay after escape to the governor is worth appreciating. One can't help admiring the intelligent manner in which he stage manages his final escape from right under the governor's nose. In short, it won't be wrong to say that Evans is a master genius having potential enough to get over any obstacle in life. Since Evans is the main character, I have tried to read out the character sketch of Evans. I hope you people gained an insight into Evans's character. Now I have some short answer types and long answer types prepared for you. The answers are given as well, so you people can go through the slides at leisure and copy down these answers. Why did people doubt Evans's sincerity towards taking the O-level examination? How was the governor befooled at the end? Evans tries an O-level shows the battle of wits between the criminal and the law keepers. Explain. What precautions do the prison authorities take to ensure the exam was conducted smoothly? What was the real purpose of the correction slip that was mentioned by the examinations department? How did Evans escape in the end, even though he was handcuffed and did not resist arrest? Why does Evans feel particularly annoyed at his nail scissors and nail file having been taken away? Is his annoyance justified? What was the purpose of the numbers that Evans was required to write on his answer sheet? What was the real purpose of the correction slip that was mentioned by the examination department? How did Evans and his friends ensure that the pig's blood did not coagulate? What personal qualities of Evans endeared him to the prison staff? What evidence is there in the story to prove this? What clues did the answer sheet of Evans provide to the governor? Describe the precautions taken by the prison authorities for a smooth conduct of Evans's examination. Now, the assignment. Here are a few short answer type questions. You can see them on the screen. Please try to answer these questions once you have gone through the story carefully. Go through the slides again and again, and I'm sure these questions won't be a problem for you all. Copy these questions and you will be able to answer these questions properly. Here are a few more questions. Do go through them and listen to the explanation given by me. Go through the slides. Again, you'll be able to answer these questions.